This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports. You're listening to TGI Sports Talk with your host, Keith Angle, on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good evening, everybody. Keith Angle with TGI Sports Talks, college, football, and soon-to-be basketball huddle. How are you all doing tonight? Hope you had a great New Year's, safe, happy. We had some interesting playoff games, I'll tell you that. For a change, we got two great semifinal games. We'll talk a little bit, as long as you don't like defense. We'll talk a lot about that. We'll have Jim Biringer on to talk about the games, kind of give our thoughts on the final soon to come, and some other topics as well. Listen, off the top, I want to tell you this, and I know our SEC people aren't in the room yet, but I got a couple things to say before we get started. Two things. Georgia, you played really good moxie ridden football game. You showed the moxie of a champion is what I want to say. But for having the best coaching staff, you outcoached Ryan Day, Kirby Smart, and your staff. Sniffing out the fake punt was probably the play of the game, what saved it for Georgia, and Stetson Bennett with a very gutsy performance, especially at the end. That saved you. You won. Good job. Michigan fans, shut up about the officiating. You didn't lose because of, a touchdown being placed at the 1 yard line. First of all, you didn't punch it in from the one. You couldn't even do that. Second of all, you give up 51 points, and every time you got yourself back in the game, you give up a big play on defense to let TCU pull away again. Listen, you were gritty. You stayed in the game. You didn't fold. But stop complaining about the referees. I don't want to hear it. Anyway, we'll talk all about that stuff. We'll talk about your guys' topics. What else did I want to talk about today? As I said, we'll talk about the semifinal. We'll talk about whether Jim Harbaugh is going to the NFL. Once again, those rumors are flying. I still think Ohio State and Michigan could start the coaching carousel in full motion again, because I think Ryan Day may want to get out ahead of the posse at Ohio State. We'll talk about that. Don't be surprised if he's the next coach of the Cleveland Browns. Don't be surprised when Jim Harbaugh is gone and we got to start looking for coaches at two very high-profile schools. We'll see. Anyway, welcome in, guys. Welcome everybody on Facebook tonight, Twitter, YouTube, all the groups that'll let me share this, and we'll be talking to you later. Good evening, Augustin. How are you? Good to have you with us. By the way, not a great showing by the Pac-12, 4-3 in the bowl games this time. I do believe, let's see, how did your team do, Augustin? I don't remember since I'm talking about it. Don't know where the Pac-12 is. There you are. Oregon did win 28-27. That was a great game, that North Carolina game. North Carolina led the whole way. Great job by your team. Good to have you. Good. I'm glad you're doing well. And again, congratulations to your team. Hopefully they can do better. Hopefully they don't come looking for your head coach for any more jobs if two more big name schools should have them open up, as I just said. We're going to get into this. We'll have Jim Biringer join us from a little bit from Let's Talk Sports and the FullPressHockey.com. This isn't a hockey show, obviously, but if you guys are interested in hockey, check out Jim's stuff on FullPressHockey.com. He's got to do some coverage, I think, of the World Juniors tonight, if I'm not wrong. What else are we going to talk about? We'll get into the final. TCU, is TCU the biggest? Would they be the biggest story, the biggest upset ever, upset champion ever? We talked a little bit about last week. I looked into it a little further, and they might very well be the biggest surprise winner when you look at pedigree, right? Miami, when they won their national championship, we talked about it last year in 1982, over Nebraska, they only had about a 550 winning percentage historically, right? It's higher now. But TCU, I believe, is in the 500s, 540-ish. They would be have the lowest historical winning percentage of any program to win the national championship since Maryland in the 50s. So I think it's easy to say this could be the biggest upset ever. We'll talk about Harbaugh. We'll talk about some of the other first-year coaches. We'll get into a little bit of basketball as well tonight. If we have time near the end of the show, we'll get into a lot more basketball as we head towards, get through football. But, there could be a lot of football to come after the game here. So, at least news-wise. So we'll get into that. They did win the Holiday Bowl. Is a great game. They trailed the entire game, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Except for the end, which is the most important place to be ahead. As we all know, if you listen to the coach of the Dolphins, the best way to win any game is to be ahead and score more points. Listen, I do want to say, too, I know this is a college football show, but I do want to just mention Damar Hamlin a little bit tonight, real quickly. He went to the University of Pittsburgh, and we do want to certainly send out our best wishes to him as he struggles to recover from the cardiac arrest that he suffered on the field Monday night. Scary situation. It's a freak thing, guys. Let's not. I fear that the NFL and the NCAA will take this and kind of run with it. They tend to do that in these types of situations and overreact. This is a tragic situation, but it's also, probably not something that was preventable at the time that it happened. It was either a freak accident, with a blow to the chest, or he had some kind of defect that nobody would have been able to predict. And it's happened before in sports. It's happened in college sports. If you remember Hank Gathers back in the 90s at Loyola Marymount, tragically dying during the conference tournament out there for Loyola of Marymount. And the team gathered itself and made a run in the NCAA playoffs, but it was a tragic loss of a great, great basketball player. This reminded me a little bit of that. It was a scary situation Monday night. And we want to send our best wishes to Damar and his family as he continues his recovery in Cincinnati. And he did go to the University of Pittsburgh, and I know he's got a lot of people that still follow him or close to him there. And a great outpouring of support has come for Damar during this time. So we wish him well. And again, this isn't a NFL show, but he does have ties, as all of them do, back to college. So I just wanted to throw that out there at the top. What did you think? And then we're waiting on Jim Biringer from I'm having trouble remembering to say let's talk sports and not his other affiliation. I was told very bluntly not to share Jim's appearances to his old affiliation. So I apologize for that. And we'll make sure that we give him the credit where it's deserved. So talking about the semifinals again, two great football games, correct? We complain every year that we don't get exciting games. You couldn't have got two more exciting games. I know there wasn't a lot of defense played, but for sheer entertainment value, these two games were amazing. And there were some people that really, kind of proved themselves. Max Duggan, I think, he didn't play his best game, but man, as he finds a way to win football games, similar to Stetson Bennett. And I don't know where these guys are going to fit on the next level, but they played really good football games. Stetson Bennett didn't play his best game for sure, but he played really well in the last fourth quarter of this game, especially in the last 2 minutes on that drive that put Georgia ahead. And C.J. Stroud played very well. I think C.J. Stroud played, at least from what I've seen, the best game that he's played in college football at Ohio State to date. And will he help his draft stock? Probably. And I think he did some things in this game that he was getting some grief for not being able to do, such as move outside of the pocket and throw the ball on the run and make guys miss, which has not been his forte. He played very well in that facet of the game, in all facets of the game, I thought. What night was it? Saturday. New Year's Eve. So great job. Georgia, as I said, and we'll get into that a little bit with Jim when he comes. And you guys, whatever topics you've got, I certainly want to dive into them.
Third generation.
Hold on one second. We got some noise here. As I started to say before, I think kudos have to go. Well, Georgia did not play its best game. And Georgia may very well not have been the best team on the field that night, to be honest with you. And I said that Ohio State matched up with them athletically, talent-wise, better than anybody. What stood out and what really was the difference maker here was the coaching staff. One play, them sniffing out the fake punt, is what really won the game for Georgia. And you look at kudos to Kirby Smart and the people he's got in place, because obviously Kirby Smart probably did not see that himself, but he was alerted to it, and they made the right call that really saved the game for the Bulldogs on Saturday night. So again, while they may not have been the best team that night, or I'm sorry, the best team, they were the team that won. Good evening, Jim Biringer.
Yo, what's going on, man? How we doing?
Awesome. Great to have you with us tonight.
Great to be here as always.
Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you as well.
I was just talking.
By the way, great call from last week. I'm glad your prediction came right. 2 awesome games.
They were 2 awesome games. And, people complained for years that the semifinals were at least one stinker, if not 2. These were, unless you like defense. I mean, there wasn't a lot of that played, but they were 2 exciting games for sure. I started the show off with a couple of comments, and I'll let you jump in here when I get through real quick. I'll recap them for you. If you're a Michigan fan, shut up about the referees, because did they blow a couple calls? Yes. But you couldn't, first of all, when you didn't get the touchdown, you couldn't put the ball in from the 1-yard line. Problem number 1. Number 2, you gave up 51 points. And every time you made a score to get yourself back in the game, you gave up another big score 1 or 2 or 3 plays later. So shut up. Your team wasn't good enough. They weren't the best team on the field that night. And in the other game, Ohio State played great football. They were the best team for how many minutes are there? 59 minutes of that game. But the coaching staffs are what set this team apart. Kirby Smart, why he's now the best coach in college football maybe at this point in time, is he's got a staff around him. I don't think Kirby Smart sniffed out this fake punt on his own, but the fact that they caught this in time saved the game. That game was over with that first down. So just a couple of things. Georgia fans, relax. You got a really good team, but I think you're going to get a tussle come Monday night. We'll see. What are your thoughts in general here, Jim?
Look, I mean, Michigan again, another year, another, opportunity to go to the dance, go to the championship game, and you fell short, and you had the Ohio State problem. You looked ahead. You were looking for redemption. You were looking to play better. You wanted Georgia. You wanted to play Georgia. Yeah, problem is you're playing TCU. And the thing was, I think TCU, we hadn't seen them come back from a loss. They bounced back great after that game. And like you said, from the start, Michigan has problems on early in the game, can't punch it in from the 1. Then the pick 6, and it's pretty much TCU's game from there. Anytime Michigan made a run. And look, TCU had to be careful, because in the second half, Michigan was making their run like they normally do. But Michigan couldn't get the big stop on defense to, maybe lead them to take the lead or tie the game. They just couldn't move the ball. When TCU needed a big stop on defense, they got it. And, the 76-yard touchdown by Quentin Johnston, early in the game, bad tackling again by Michigan. Like it felt like this, like Michigan was not prepared for this game, and TCU was ready to just to eat them apart. I mean, Max Duggan had another great game.
He didn't play his best game, but he makes plays, right? I mean, he'll look kind of choppy for a while, but then he makes a play that makes your jaw drop a bit, and he's just fun to watch play. And I really feel like they're different players, right? But him and Stetson Bennett, to me, are very similar in the fact that people have not always believed in them, and all they do is go out and win football games. Stetson Bennett, heck, Kirby Smart's still ripping him after he brings that team back on Saturday night.
Well, I mean, Kirby said it after the game. He's like, we got to play better, and he even knows it. I mean, if Georgia thinks they're going to win with that kind of performance on Monday, they ain't going to win, because I think it might be too late the way TCU's offense puts up points. I mean, I'm very, very impressed by how TCU continues to put up points. But you go back to, and just before I go to the Ohio State game, what the heck is Jim Harbaugh doing in the fourth quarter when TCU has the ball? How come you're not calling timeout? Like, what are you doing? Even
his father, did you see the film of his dad in the stands? Yeah. He was doing the same thing. Why aren't you calling timeout?
I mean, he basically iced the game for TCU.
Yeah, that was very, very. I don't know. Maybe he was thinking about the call he had with the Panthers right afterwards. I don't know, but
I don't know. I mean, I think he's gone. I mean, the way he said, "I think I'll be here next year," tells me he's probably not being around Michigan next year.
Now the word is, and we'll talk a little bit more about it maybe in a minute, but the word is that if he gets an offer, he's
going. Yeah. I wouldn't be shocked. But going to the Ohio State game, I mean, we talked about it last week. The team that could match Georgia talent for talent was Ohio State. And one of my keys to this game for Ohio State to win was to exploit the cornerbacks and the safeties of Georgia. Their secondary is weak. And I think TCU, if they're going to watch tape going into this game, that's what they're going to look at. And I think Kirby's going to have those guys tighten up. But what a way for CJ Stroud to go out. I mean, 4 touchdowns, 384 yards passing. I mean, and he loses his best target, Marvin Harrison Jr., on a possible targeting, whatever. I mean, again, to me, look, either call it or don't call it, because I seen plays. I'll go back to the Michigan game at the end. I think that was targeting.
That was definitely targeting.
But they didn't call it. Meanwhile, you have an Ohio State player laid out. That was targeting. And then go back to the Clemson game when an Ohio State player leads with his head, hits Trevor Lawrence in the back and gets called for targeting and kicks out of the game. I'm like, wait a minute. Like, so I thought the rule was you lead with your helmet, but that's neither here nor there. But I love the way the championship heart of Georgia.
Yeah.
That separates them from Ohio State. Ohio State, I'm had on the ropes, but again, the fake punt, Kirby Smart, those things. But Stetson Bennett just wills his team to victory. Like Max Duggan willed his team to that overtime against Kansas State, almost a win. I mean, it was just great to see. And the fact that, Georgia had to come back from this, come from behind, and Ohio State still had a chance to win the game. Like, he muffed the kick, but I mean, if it's on target, I mean, they have a chance to win the game.
Yeah, he did. It wasn't a great effort. And I thought it was very fitting that game went, and that was literally at the stroke of midnight for the new year that he made that or missed that kick.
Right.
You mentioned CJ Stroud, and I think again, I haven't seen every Ohio State game, obviously, but from what I've seen and even what I've read this week, he probably played his best game as a Buckeye in his last game. And he did some things that people have been kind of on him for, that he hasn't been able to move around in the pocket and get away from pressure. And he did it Saturday night. He moved away from pressure and threw the ball on the run very accurately. And I do think losing Marvin Harrison was a big blow to this team in that.
I mean, he already had 2 scores in the game. He was lighting up that Georgia secondary. And like I said, I mean, even Kirby said after the game, we have to be better. He was not satisfied with the win. I mean, that's clearly right out of the Nick Saban playbook of coaching. Like, yeah, your team won. Yeah, we weren't good enough to win. Like, we need to be much better. And I think Georgia will be much better come Monday night. But I think they're going to be into a dogfight with, no pun intended, with TCU, because I'm really, really impressed with the Horned Frogs this year.
I think, sticking with the Ohio State game for a second, Ohio State-Georgia game for a second, I think the difference here was coaching. Ryan Day, I mean, looked like he was running around with his hair on fire that whole game, right? Again, a little chaotic, but But Kirby, look at he's a champion. He showed why he's a great coach. I think he outcoached Ryan Day in this game, and that's the only reason. Stetson Bennett's fortitude and Kirby Smart's coaching and his staff's coaching. I don't want to give him all the credit, but he hires these guys, so you have to give. I think you still have to give the head coach credit. That was a difference in this game. Otherwise, Ohio State outplayed them for the majority of that football game, and they were the better team.
They were the better team, and they probably should have won the game. But again, the coaching, Ryan Day, maybe the adjustments just weren't there. They left guys open, allowed Stetson Bennett to run. In the first part of that game, from when I was able to watch and everything, you get to and you go back and watch the tape, and you see that Ohio State was able to take away those short passing routes that Georgia liked to do, go to the 2 tight end sets. Took away a lot of the running game, and then in the fourth quarter, they kind of got away from it and allowed Georgia to move the ball up and down the field, which was kind of the difference in that game. But we've seen Georgia able to come back and keep things close. As long as they can keep it close and their defense was able to, stand up. Again, their secondary, I think, is the weakness of this team. And
yeah, definitely.
And if TCU exploits it, we might see them win the national title for the first time since 1938. I mean, I believe they would be the first unranked AP team to win the national title since Georgia Tech in 1990, right?
I believe that is accurate. Yes, and we talked a little bit about last week. I don't know if you were still with us or not, but we talked about, if TCU were to win, would this be the biggest upset? We talked about some of them. We talked about Miami in 1982 over Nebraska. We talked about Clemson winning back in the 80s with Danny Ford as their coach over Nebraska in the Orange Bowl. I think this would be, and there's some numbers to back it up. Going back to actually, like Miami's at the time, historically, their winning percentage was like 550, something like that. TCU's historically is like 544.
Right.
So it would be the lowest winning percentage for a program through their history to win a national championship since Maryland did it in the early 50s.
Jeez,
so
man.
I think this would be one of the greatest upsets, not just this game, but them getting to this game and winning it would be the most unlikely national championship in history, I think.
Yeah,
and
I think so.
As you said, they started the year nobody
unranked. No, they were unranked.
And the first team to have a losing season the year before they won a national championship. The last team to do it was Michigan State back in the 60s. So that's a long time. I'm old. I remember
that's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of history in this game. Can it happen? Georgia looking for back-to-back national championships in this format, be the first team ever to do it. First team, I believe, since Alabama to go back-to-back. Obviously, Alabama went back-to-back in the old format, but still, I mean.
We talked about it Sunday a little bit on the show. What would be the bigger story? What is the better story? I don't know if bigger or better. I guess
TCU winning is the better story.
You think it's a better story than the back-to-back national champions?
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. I think it's the better story. I mean, yeah, people are going to be talking about it for way longer than if Georgia goes back-to-back.
Yeah, just because of the landscape, I think, the college football landscape today, right, with the SEC being the big bad.
The big team. Yeah, this team knocked off the best team, the number one ranked team. They did it. Nobody believed in them. Cinderella story out of nowhere. Should have been undefeated.
Well, what are the SEC elitists? And it's funny, none of them are here with us tonight. I'm surprised. They'll probably pop in, once I've started talking about something else. But
yeah, I mean, the comments. No comments tonight. I mean,
John DeLong, where are you? And again, yes, Georgia won. I get it. But what's your excuse gonna be?
If TCU does it.
If TCU wins this game, and please don't tell me they don't have a chance.
Because they do. They just beat Michigan.
Georgia should, by all accounts, win this game. But nobody can say TCU can't win this game. That's for sure.
I mean, look, I think TCU keeps it close. I don't, I think they can pull this off, but there's no way there's no way, whatever the line is.
13.5 was the last I saw.
No way, man. Give me TCU.
I'll be all over the place in this game.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest. I switched up. You and I talked about it. I did pick Georgia to win the game, and Georgia did win the game. I did end up betting Ohio State plus.
So you made out. You made out in that. So
I made out both ways. I was very happy.
Yeah.
So my pick won, and well, I won one because I had Michigan winning as well. But.
Yeah, but you know what? I don't know how many people actually pick TCU outside of TCU fans. I mean, let's be honest. I think a lot of, look, TCU's been a good team all year. I mean, we've talked about it, the wide receivers, but I think their defense was definitely tested. They came up to it. Georgia's offense is high powered, but again, I think that's the one thing. If you're going to exploit Georgia, it's going to be through the air. And Ohio State did it, and TCU has the wide receivers to do it too.
Just for giggles, Monday night, I'm going to say TCU wins the game in overtime.
And why not?
I don't know. The score could be in the 60s if they go to overtime, but
don't matter.
I don't think there's going to be a lot of defense played in this game. I think it's going to be a lot of fun and one where I hope it's a good game. I want to see a good game.
I want to see a good game. We had two great semifinal games. Come down to the wire, both of them. And, we just want to say that, we just hope for the national championship to be good as well.
Yeah. Good to have you with us tonight, CA. What other, were there other, there was a lot of good football games over the weekend, some interesting games. If you're better, I got to tell you, if you're better, the Mississippi State game was the game of the whole bowl season because I bet Mississippi State minus 6. They were ahead by 3. And turned a lateral Miami Miracle lateral play into 6 more points. I turned the TV onto the USC game because I figured it was over, and I looked at my phone and I saw they won 19-10, and I was like, "Thank you, Lord, that was nice."
Yeah.
So,
speaking of, let's go Cotton Bowl, baby. How about Tulane, man? You would give it up for the group of 5 teams.
I got to tell you, it looks like Lincoln Riley, and I know it's his first year there, but this guy can coach offense, but they need to play defense.
USC's defense has been weak the whole year.
Yeah,
I mean, all season it's been bad. Like what? I mean, I don't get it. Like everybody since the beginning, even when they were undefeated, looked like they're going to run the Pac-12. What did everybody say? Well, their defense has got to be able to improve. Their defense needs to be better. Their defense has to stop somebody. You're up. What? They were up double digits and couldn't close the game out in the fourth quarter.
Not good. And they look like Lincoln Riley's Oklahoma teams. And if this is going to be what they have at USC, and you're happy, winning 11 games and getting to the playoff every couple of years and losing in the semifinals, and Lincoln Riley's your guy, I guess. So.
Yeah, but
I know a lot of guys didn't play, but that didn't have any effect.
Doesn't matter. They were still up double digits.
And kudos to Tulane.
Yeah, they played the game out. On the last play of the game, they won. I mean, that's where your defense – who cares if you give up a score? Don't let them score at the end. And that's where their defense wasn't able to stop anybody. Yeah. That's been their weakness the whole season. So, I mean, Tulane, again, exploited their defensive weaknesses. Give it up for who was I going to say? Alabama showed why they're Alabama. Bryce Young in his last game with the Tide goes out a winner. I think everybody expected that. I think Alabama played like Alabama and Nick Saban expected.
Great comments by Nick Saban after the game as well, because they talked about how, it was great that Bryce Young played and Henderson played. He goes, yeah, but nobody's talking about the fact that I had 10 other guys opt out that went in the transfer portal. I offered them, every one of them, a chance to play, and they all turned me down. Somebody's got to fix this. Yeah, well, he's right.
He's right. Well, I mean, he's preaching to the choir. We all know that.
Yeah.
Like we all know that we all want guys to play and not be in the transfer portal. And all that fun jazz, but hey,
one of the game I'll comment on, and I'll let you comment on as well, was the Rose Bowl. And I've been reading Penn State fans and some of the college football groups all week talking about how because Ohio State and Michigan lost, Penn State showed that they were the class of the Big Ten and they should have been in the playoff. And I'm like, well, don't you at least have to beat those teams yourself? Before you can make those claims? I know you played a nice game in the Rose Bowl against Utah, and you actually beat a top 10 team. Congratulations, James Franklin. But you're not the best team in the Big Ten until you beat Ohio State and Michigan, so you need to shut up.
Yeah, I mean, like, kudos to Penn State closing out the Rose Bowl. It kind of stinks that Cam Rising got hurt in that game because it was a 7-point game when he went out,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then the pick six kind of opened it up, and then they just rolled from there. But Penn State was charging towards the end of the year. They got ranked 8th in the final rankings, and I think people expected it. Okay, if Ohio State gets in, then they're going to go to the Rose Bowl, take on Utah. Sticking in the Big Ten, how about Iowa's offense? What, 21 points? I mean, where did that come from? I mean, where was that all season?
Well, by the way, because I bet the over in that game, which was 31, I found out wasn't watching the game. I was excited too. Iowa's a little bit of offense. 14 of those points were on pick sixes.
Okay, so I mean, still, you know what? Stick with the staple, but
They
still,
did win though.
but they still did win. Tennessee showed a lot in their win over Clemson. I thought Clemson should have won. Dabo Swinney just laid an egg in that game, and no pun intended, but I mean they just didn't show up. And good kudos in Tennessee for showing that they're one of the class teams still in the SEC.
It'll be interesting to see whether Milton can continue that into next year as the heir apparent to Herndon. I thought what's the guy's Klubnik? I can never say his name. Klubnik, thank you. I thought he was going to step up after what we saw in the ACC championship game. I thought this would be a high-scoring affair, but Tennessee's defense is not that good. Clemson's got to be very upset about
it looked like the South Carolina game all over again.
Yeah, I get you. I know you got to go, Jim, to cover some or pay attention to some hockey. You got USA and Canada.
USA leads 2-1 at the intermission. Just went to intermission a little bit ago, so I got a few more minutes. But it was great. I mean, college football wrapping up. Got the national championship game. A lot of these bowl games that we kind of poo-pooed at. They were actually a little bit more entertaining than I thought they would be. But still, I mean, how many teams are watching? How many people are actually watching Ohio and Wyoming go to overtime? But that they pulled one out there. Give it up for Notre Dame getting a big win against South Carolina. I thought that was very impressive.
Entertaining game as well. South Carolina played very well, and Notre Dame, came back to win at the end. So I thought both teams were winners in that game.
I thought that was one of the games I was looking forward to this bowl season because I thought that was always I thought those guys would be entertaining.
What are your thoughts on? Well, first of all, I think we picked the game, but just to be official, I'm going to pick TCU. Did you make a pick?
I'll say Georgia goes back to back, but
okay.
I'm not confident in it because I can't. Part of me, my brain says go with Georgia, but my heart wants TCU.
Well, that's fair enough. And I'll ask you for one more prediction because something could happen before you and I get together again. Either Sunday or next Wednesday. I'm predicting Harbaugh's a goner.
Yeah.
And Ryan Day will be gone as well. I think he's going to get out ahead of the posse. I really do. I think both of them will head to the NFL this year. And I'll even add on to that. I think you and I talked about it last week. Mike Vrabel could very well be the next head coach of Ohio State.
Yeah, I definitely think Harbaugh's gone. I definitely think he's gone. Ryan Day, I think he goes too. I really do. I just don't. You have 3 losses now. Obviously they won the Rose Bowl last year, but you can't finish the job against Georgia. You have them on the ropes. You have 2 losses to Michigan. Are people going to be satisfied and want your head? So
not Ohio State. They won't be satisfied. So
no, exactly. They haven't won a national championship since the first year of this thing. So,
well, the carousel may start spinning very wildly by the time we chat again.
I mean, Nick Saban, this is the guy that's the king of college football, right? I'll say it again. If the regular season stats count in the playoffs, which I think they do, postseason stats count towards regular season stats with all these records and statistics.
Mm-hmm.
The transfer portal and the coaching carousel cannot open until the national championship is over.
Absolutely, 100% agree. We get better. It'll be better for everybody. It'll be better for the players.
Right. It doesn't open until the day after the national championship is over.
You know,
and I understand with the new format and everything, it's going to get pushed back a little bit more. So what? What?
The sad part, Jim, is I agree with you definitely, but an issue like Cam Rising, hopefully he's not hurt.
Right.
I haven't heard the extent of his injury.
No, I haven't either.
Hopefully it's not, career threatening or something that will affect his draft status. Because if so, then we're going to have more and more guys just opting out of these games.
Right. I think it was a leg. He was able to walk off the field.
Yeah.
So when I just think,
if
they just kept him out.
If I'm looking for a quarterback in the draft, I'm looking harder at Cam Rising than I am at some of these other guys who don't go in and play at all. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know if Cam. It's so hard to judge guys for Sunday on a Saturday, but
I know.
But you never know. We've seen so many guys come out of nowhere that are undrafted, 5th, 6th round picks that make teams.
I can think of a 6th round pick that did pretty well for my team.
Yeah, I think everybody knows
his name.
I think everybody knows who you're talking about.
Anyway, Jim, let's root I guess we're rooting for the USA tonight. So
always root for USA against Canada. Let's go.
I would imagine so. I just wanted to make sure I was on the right page here. That's all.
No, absolutely. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. When USA plays Canada, hey, friendship north of the border goes out the window.
And we'll have you on Sunday to talk some hockey. CA's dying to talk about the Stars, apparently. Where is he here? Somewhere he is. How about them Stars? He wants to talk
Stars
about
playing well. Jason Robertson, he's doing his thing, man. Joe Pavelski, Rupe Hintz, man. That top line's playing well for the Dallas Stars.
Excellent. So we'll have you on Sunday. CA, make sure you tune in early. Jim, when I have Jim on, he's on the early shift so that he can get out and play some hockey himself.
It happens, man.
He'll be in the first half hour. Make sure that I don't know, because I've started at 8:30 now, not 9 o'clock. So did you still come on at 9 o'clock when I had you on a couple weeks ago?
Possibly. I'm not sure.
All right, whatever works for you, and then I'll tell our listeners when you'll be on so they can, Amanda will know when to look for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I think I should be okay I should be able to go, at 9 on Sunday. So
excellent. We'll talk some hockey and some NHL and some World Juniors, and we'll catch up with you then.
All right, sounds good. Have a good night, everybody.
Have a good night, Jim. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
The great Jim Biringer from Let's Talk Sports and also from the hockey world, fullpresshockey.com. CA, check that website out. Some great stuff. Not just by Jim, but the other writers there as well. And Jim's will be a regular coming up again on Sunday mornings as we talk more and more hockey. And I know that'll make you happy. Good evening, Kenny Gifford. I think I saw you pop in here. Where are you? Cam Rising already had a bad leg. You know what? But doesn't that make it? And I know your answer, Kenny. It makes it more impressive that he played as it is. I've been very high on Will Levis all year from Kentucky, right? And Will Levis probably will be the first quarterback taken from Kentucky. He'll be the first quarterback taken in the NFL draft. But if I'm a pro evaluator, I'm looking out for a guy like Cam Rising, who he's already hurt. He's playing in the Rose Bowl. I get that, but he played last year, so it's not like he's never made it to a Rose Bowl. But he's out there playing on a bad leg, and Will Levis, who's been banged up this year, is sitting out Kentucky's bowl game to kind of protect his stock. And I just don't like it. And if I'm an evaluator, that means something to me. Right? So anyway, as far as the games go, again, for you guys who got here late, CA and Dave Guyette, good evening, by the way. I don't think I said good evening to you, Kenny. I've been talking a lot about, we were talking a lot, and I've talked a lot, obviously, about the semifinals. Tremendous games, I thought, unless you like defense. I'll say again, in case you guys want to get in here, I'll talk anything you guys want to talk about as far as these games go. Any thoughts you have on either semifinal game or the playoffs or any of the college football games, the college bowl games. I thought there were some entertaining games. I was happy for Tulane. But I'll say again here, if you're a Michigan fan, because this is what I've been listening to, and I'll give you, there's three things I want to talk about. Michigan fans, Georgia fans, Ohio State fans, and I guess Penn State fans. Maybe, I don't know. If you're Michigan fans, shut up about the referees, okay? They made a couple bad calls. Your team stunk and made a lot more bad plays than the referees did, okay? Did they cost you 6 points? Yes, but I think they spotted the ball on the 1 yard line. You couldn't get it in. And you gave up 51 points. And it didn't stop TCU once after you got yourselves back in the game and scored some of these points. Scored some of these touchdowns. Just a bad look, right? And Georgia, you weren't the best team. It's time for the SEC elitists to realize there are other good teams out there. You won this game, and God bless you, you won. Congratulations. You probably are the best team in the country. I said Ohio State was a one team that matched up with you off athletically and talent-wise. And if they could put that together on the field, you better watch out. And they showed you better watch out. They were the better team for much of that night. And it was the coaching staff. And it was Stetson Bennett, who's always overlooked, were the differences and why they won this team. Stetson Bennett he made some mistakes. He got up off the mat, played really good, great football in the fourth quarter. The coaching staff of Georgia did a much better job, I thought, than the Ohio State coaching staff did in this game, especially with the game on the line. And then Penn State fans, you got to shut up. I mean, these guys are really out of control. I wish we had some Penn State fans that I could get on here and just. They won the Rose Bowl convincingly against Utah without Utah's starting quarterback. But Jeepers Creepers, don't be sitting here telling Jeepers Creepers, isn't that? I got to watch my language. You aren't the best team in the country. Don't be telling me. Don't be sitting there and posting that Penn State is better than Michigan and Ohio State because they won the Rose Bowl and Michigan State and Ohio State lost in the semifinals. And who belongs in the semifinals now? And you guys got to beat Penn State or Ohio State just like once before you start running off at the mouth about how you're better than them. Stop. Please stop. Oh, my God. Now, if there's a 12-team playoff, Penn State would have been in. Maybe they make a run, but whatever. Just because, and I did predict Georgia would win it all. But I'm going to be rooting for TCU come Monday night. I'll tell you right now, they have got a chance to win this game. And if you SEC elitists out there think that they don't belong on the same field with you, I think you told me the same thing about Ohio State. And I wish I wish John DeLon was here tonight. John, if you're here, speak up. You know, this is not, again, we talked about the expansion of the playoff to 12 teams and it being participation trophy time. There's a team that, according to your rules, shouldn't be playing in the playoff because they didn't win their championship, the championship of their conference. I'm just saying. I think it would have been exciting, man. You saw some of the teams that would have been in a 12-team playoff. Take a look at some of those. It would have been very interesting to see Tulane. Alabama might have run the table if they'd gotten into a 12-team playoff this year. USC would have gone out early. Maybe Penn State makes a run. Who knows? Maybe somebody like Tulane gets hot. It's going to be fun to watch. What are the other big stories? What are the other big stories as we look at the college football world here, guys? Talk about anything you guys want to talk about. I want to talk about some of the interesting coaching, first-year coaches and how they made out. There's some grades on ESPN, and we'll kind of take a look at them and see if I or you agree with them. Some news around college football. Interesting. Bobby Petrino, who, you know, I wouldn't trust this guy to take my garbage out here. It's got to go down the driveway here in a little bit. I wouldn't trust him to do that. This guy, if you remember, Bobby Petrino left Louisville to go to the Atlanta Falcons, made it 15 games and then quit and walked away and went back to college to coach Arkansas. Then he got himself in all kinds of trouble with a co-ed there or a graduate student. I don't know what the deal was. Got her in a motorcycle accident. Now he takes a job. He's trying to get himself rehabilitated, takes a job at UNLV, and a week later he goes to Texas A&M as the OC. Him and Jimbo Fisher deserve each other. Bobby Petrino is a good offensive mind, but Bobby Petrino is not a good leader of men. I can tell you that right now. Duke football. Listen, Duke won their what Duke do? I thought the ACC had a good run here. Let's see. Well, how'd the ACC do this year? I'll give you the conference record so far. Duke 30-13 over a really good UCF team. Watch out for Duke. That was in the Military Bowl. And I don't know if you're serious, CA, but whether Duke's going to be a powerhouse is certainly up for debate. But right now, they're heading in the right direction. They're playing good football. The conferences with the best record were the ACC 5-4, the American 4-3, Big Ten 5-4, the MAC 4-2, the SEC 6-5, the Big 12 just 2-6, but they got a big one, the team going to the national championship. Who else? Conference USA 3-3. The Independents were 3-2. Pac-12 just 3-4. Some bad losses too. I tell you, USC in the Cotton Bowl. All kudos to Tulane, but they've got control of that game in the fourth quarter. I think they led by. I want to say they led by 12, with like 6 minutes left or less. You can't blow that game if you're USC. What do you got here, Kenny? Notre Dame will be tough next year. I don't know. We still don't have a decision. And I'd love to get your opinion on this, Kenny, because I don't think you were here last week when we discussed this. I don't have the transfer portal. Let me find if I can find what the latest is in the transfer portal. Sam Hartman, one of the best quarterbacks in the country, has set all kinds of passing records in the ACC and the NCAA. Hit the transfer portal. He'll be a fifth-year senior. He's a graduate transfer with a year of eligibility left. And the rumors are hot and heavy. He'll be going to Notre Dame to be the quarterback next year. They've had quarterback issues this year. Pine is transferred out. I'm trying to remember where he went. I didn't set up my portal link here before I came on the air. It was kind of rushed. But Pine's out. Buckner played, if I'm saying his name correctly, played well in the bowl game against South Carolina after a spotty start. But I don't think he's going to be the quarterback there next year. And if they were to bring Sam Hartman into that situation, I really think this team could be national championship contenders. They got off to a rough start against South Carolina. South Carolina played a really good football game. They played really good football the whole second half of the season under Shane Beamer. And Notre Dame settled in, came back in this game a couple of times. They made it it was a really entertaining game in the second half in the fourth quarter. And Notre Dame prevailed. And I think this team is going to be very tough. I think it's a big victory for Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame. Not because South Carolina's, historically a great program, but I think a bowl win in your first year to finish 9-4 when you were, I guess, started the season, 0-2. You had lost games to Marshall at home, to Stanford at home. I mean, if you said to any Notre Dame fan, and I'll say it to Kenny Gifford, who is our resident Notre Dame fan, if I told you after you lost to Marshall and Stanford at home that you'd win a bowl game and be 9-4, you probably would have been pretty happy. So Notre Dame, yes, on the rise. And they're always going to be ranked, to start the season anyway, right? We know that. Let's see. Let's look at some of these first-year coaches. I did want to look at this. If I can find the damn thing. Now it's gone. Every time I do this, I find a nice story I want to pick apart a little bit, and then it's gone. Here we go. Oh, crap. Here's the thing, though. Do I have? I guess I do. All right. Let's look at I'm going to look at some of the first-year coaches. Obviously, Sonny Dykes. ESPN grades them an A. I don't know how you can't give them an A+. Plus. Out of nowhere. Made of rubber. What are you laughing at there, buddy? Good to have you with us tonight, Made of Rubber. I got to know what you're laughing at. You can't just come in and laugh and then run. You can tell me anything you want. How does Sonny Dykes get only an A? A+++. TCU, only the best coaching job in the country this year, probably by Sonny Dykes. Going back to his alma mater. Paying tribute to his mentor, Mike Leach, who passed away tragically here a month or so ago. Great job by Sonny Dykes. And by the way, I do think if TCU were to win this game Monday night, which they do have a shot at winning this game, it would be the most shocking national championship ever. Ever. Miami winning at 82 against Nebraska, an undefeated Nebraska team, and Tom Osborne was shocking, but they were 4 in the country. They'd had a losing record. Well, I shouldn't say that. They didn't have a losing record the year before, but they were never a powerhouse before that. They were a team that, in their good years would win 8 games. To get to number 4 in the country before that game was a victory for Miami, and to win that game against Nebraska, the best team in the country. And kudos to Tom Osborne for going for 2 and not going for a tie in a time there were no overtimes. He tried to win. Kalen DeBoer at Washington's another guy that I would say had a great year. Turned Washington around. 4-8 last year, 11-2 with a nice bowl victory this year. Michael Penix blossomed after transferring from Indiana to Washington and playing for DeBoer. I don't know. I think Michael Penix might have a year back if he decides to return. He's got time left. So I guess Made of Rubber is not going to tell us what he thinks is so funny, but I think it's funny that you pop in and laugh and leave. Not telling yet. Transfer portal and spring games first. Yeah, agreed. But if we're talking about Notre Dame, they'll be ranked high. What other coaches did well this year or surprise? Jim Mora at UConn, you got to give him an A. UConn 6-7. They went to a bowl game. They lost, but this team was nowhere. 11-1 last year. They haven't won since the Big East broke up. UConn was one of the biggest losers of the first realignment in college football. No. No. Anyway, they were one of the biggest losers in the first realignment of college football back in 2012, and then which cost the Big East really their conference. They were in no man's land. They had nowhere to go. Heard them in basketball as well. But Jim Mora did a great job in his first year. And Jim Mora, I don't know that Jim Mora really cares about getting another job. He's not a young guy anymore. I think he'd be happy to transfer this team. And again, they're an independent. They're going to have to find a league to play in eventually. Oh, no telling yet. I got you. There's no telling. I mean, everything until we play games, look at it's all conjecture, right? Transfer portal still got thousands of guys in it. We just talked about Duke, CA. Mike Elko, great job there. 9-4. They were 3-9 last year. Tremendous job by Mike Elko. And who knows? This team will compete. Maybe they're 5-3 in the ACC. I think this is a team that could surprise next year and maybe compete for the ACC. I don't care about these guys. Jeff Tefford, former Cal coach, come back this year, coached at Fresno State. Fresno was already a pretty good football team. Went 10-3 last year. And Jeff Tefford had been the head coach here before. After he'd left Cal, he had coached at Fresno State and left after the 2019 season, I think, because of health reasons. He came back this year and did a very good job. Lincoln Riley at USC, I'm not sure how to grade Lincoln Riley yet. To me, I saw the same team, the same coach. I could have been watching Oklahoma just in different uniforms. He can't coach defense. He can't hire guys that can coach defense. Now, maybe Grimes will be okay. Yes, they won 11 games when they won 4 games a year before. So you got to give them credit for that. But again, they got no disrespect to Tulane, no disrespect to the AAC. USC can't be losing a Cotton Bowl to Tulane. Not if they want to be taken seriously as a national championship contender consistently again. Not a big fan of Lincoln Riley. And you saw what Lincoln Riley did at Oklahoma. He was a good football coach. And if you want to win 11 games and get to a semifinal and lose every couple of years, he's your guy. Joey McGuire at Texas Tech did a good job this year. 8-5. For a while, they were in contention for the Big 12 championship. Only 7-6 this team was last year. Not a football powerhouse. Mike Leach had the most success there of pretty much anybody in the last 2 decades. But he did a tremendous job. Brian Kelly, I'm going to say Brian Kelly went 10-4 this year. That team was 6-7 a year before. I didn't give him, based off of what I thought he would do his first year. I think he gets an A. ESPN's got him like with a B- here or B+. That's lower than when he was hired. What did they think he was going to do in his first year? I think he did a great job. Did a great job in the transfer portal, getting Jaden Daniels, the quarterback, through the portal. And I think he's going to be staying next year. So watch out. LSU could be the team to watch in the SEC. If you're not watching Georgia or Alabama, that could be the team to watch. Dan Lanning at Augustine's favorite team, Oregon. He did a really good job this year after getting hammered by Georgia and everybody thinking this team was going to struggle. Bo Nix played great football this year for where was I? Bo Nix played great football for Dan Lanning at Oregon last year after transferring from Auburn. So Oregon's position, I think Oregon's positioned to maybe stay at the top of that Pac-12 heap for a while. Marcus Freeman, I mean, a solid B, I think, for Marcus Freeman. I mean, I can't give him an A because of some of the teams they lost to, but as far as keeping his team from collapsing at the beginning of the season, as I said, you lose to Stanford and Marshall at home. For Notre Dame, this is not good. Probably as great after those games would have been a D or an F. So I think, getting a solid B is a good thing for him here at this point. Is anybody else I'm really interested on this list of people there? Not really. Like Joe Moorhead. Brent Venables, there's a good one. How about a solid D for Brent Venables? This guy, he took a team that was 11-2 last year. Now they lost their starting quarterback, but he had a pretty good transfer quarterback come in from UCF. I'm trying to think of his name right now. It's escaping me. Damn, I can't think of his name. Anyway, he had 11-win talent on this team. I understand there's some work to do on the defense because of what Lincoln Riley left behind, but this is a huge disappointment. In a down year for the Big 12, this team should have been fighting for the championship here at the end with TCU and Kansas State. They shouldn't have been also rans and losing and having a losing record this year. Not acceptable. Billy Napier at Florida, again, another guy with a D, I'd say. The team was bad when he came in there, but the team looked good. They're beating Utah in their home opener. But then they lost to Kentucky at home. Team lost too many, you can't. We've got to be able to recruit against Georgia and Florida. And I'm not sure that Billy Napier, just like Dan Mullen, I'm not sure he's got the chops to do that. It could be two and done for Billy Napier if he doesn't turn things around there quickly. My guy, Mario Cristobal at Miami. Sorry, solid D, Mario. 7-5 last year. Took over from Manny Diaz. Goes 5-7. There were great expectations. Ranked 14th in the country to start the season. You've got a quarterback in Van Dyke who was hyped as a first-round draft pick and Heisman Trophy candidate. You lose 5 games, including losing to Middle Tennessee at home. Getting trounced by Duke. Getting trounced by Florida State. All on your home field. Not a good sign for Mario Cristobal. FSU should rise more, finally building a defense after. Hey, listen, I think FSU, Mike Norvell was in trouble coming into this year. I think Deion Sanders was sitting there thinking he wouldn't be in Colorado this year, that he'd be in Tallahassee. But Mike Norvell did a good job straightening that situation out. I think getting some coaching changes that helped him. And good point with Jimbo. Jimbo Fisher is living off like one season at Florida State. And I don't know, look at if it wasn't for the buyout, Jimbo Fisher would not have a job right now. But Mike Norvell did a good job this year. And I do think Florida State will continue to rise and be a contender in the ACC next year as well. I don't know that Miami's going to be. Now, they did have a good recruiting year, but we know how that works out, right, Jimbo? So we'll see whether this – and again, this will be Cristobal's first full class at Miami. We'll see whether he can get some better athletes and explosiveness on both sides of the ball there and increase the opportunity to win games at Miami. They're committed to rebuilding this program money-wise, the school and facilities and whatnot. I'm not talking about NIL money. There's some crazy money being thrown around there down in Miami, but that's not what I'm talking about. Tony Elliott. ESPN doesn't give him a grade. I got to give Tony Elliott an A. This guy, now Virginia only finished 3-7, but Tony Elliott at the end of the season had to deal with the tragic circumstances that happened down there with the shooting and 3 of his players being shot and killed on a bus, and another Virginia student was also tragically killed in this as well. And I thought he did a great job of showing leadership to his team during this time and compassion. And, they didn't get a chance to play their last 2 games because of this tragedy. And I think Tony Elliott, again, for different reasons than other guys we've talked about tonight, deserves some kudos there. I want to move on to college basketball. Oh, I'll jump around a little bit here. What do you got, CA? And Mick Andrews is one of the only defensive coaches, one of the great defensive coaches ever in college football. Wouldn't disagree with that. Again and again, you know what? While defense is missing in a lot of places in college football, there are still times where defense comes up and makes stops, and it's still important in the game, even though it's so hard to coach defense today because everything favors the offensive side of the football. you still need good defensive teams that can get big stops in big moments. And you kind of saw that with Georgia a little bit, right? I mean, their defense was suspect, but on that last Ohio State or second to last Ohio State drive, they did a really good job of stopping that team, forcing a punt. They did attempt a fake punt. Again, great job by the coaching staff sniffing out that fake punt. That game's over. So anyway, great job there. Let's switch gears just a little bit. Go over to NCAA men's basketball. Take a look at the top 25 and some of the stories around college basketball. Purdue remains number one, but they got beat by Rutgers here the other night. I don't know whether they'll stay there or not. UConn had dropped from second to fourth this week, and I go by the AP poll, just like it did in football. Houston at 14-1 had moved up to number 2. They're liable to take over the number 1 spot, although they didn't have any first place vote. So it's possible Purdue will hold on to that spot after losing to what isn't a bad Rutgers team. Kansas number 3 in the poll at 12-1. They've moved up 1 spot. UConn, as I said, 14-1, suffered their first loss. They fall to 4th. Arizona and Texas stay in the same spots at 5 and 6. Interesting situations in both of these locations with coaches. Sean Miller now theoretically has been cleared of all allegations in this scandal that the NCAA and the FBI has been investigating for what seems like 10 years. I guess it's been 3 or 4, and it's cost a bunch of jobs, coaches their jobs across the country. And Texas, with a tough situation with Chris Bird, arrested under domestic abuse allegations. His wife said he choked her. Then she she took the allegations back, said she overreacted, and I don't think there's any way Texas can not cut ties with Chris Bird. I think he has to go. These types of allegations get made, even if they're recanted later. There's got to be something there. So Texas doing a remarkable job despite the storms swirling around their head coach, their suspended head coach. Alabama at 11-2, playing really good basketball. The SEC is tough as always, guys. Tennessee right behind them at 11-2. Gonzaga, a little bit of a rough start for them, 12-3. We're not used to seeing 3 losses out of Gonzaga before the first of the year. We saw it this year, though. We've seen it this year. And still talk about Gonzaga, and I don't know if this is official or not, moving to the Big 12. That'd be the death knell for their conference. It's them and St. Mary's are really the two teams propping up that league. But Gonzaga, again, they've become a powerhouse. They're no longer, the upstarts. They are a legitimate college power now. UCLA with a good start under Mick Cronin, 13-2. They're up 1 spot to 10. Virginia with another good season under Tony Bennett. Jim Larangara doing a great job at Miami. They're up to number 12 now at 13-1 at Miami. He's done a great job since he's been there. He came from George Mason. If you remember, he took George Mason to the Final Four, a decade or more ago. Arkansas, Eric Musselman doing a tremendous job again this year. They're still my dark horse. They've lost their best player to injury. Not sure how long he'll be out. But Arkansas is still my dark horse in the SEC and come March in the NCAA tournament. I've got my futures bet in already. That's a $4,000 winner. It's a good one to take a look at. What do you got here, CA? Sorry. Scratch the only tired. Scratch the only. What on? Oh, was the only. No, I saw that. Listen, I can read between the lines. I talk like you write. Almost time for CA for bedtime. Probably me too, CA. Continuing down the list here, Wisconsin's number 14. Indiana, off to a good start at 10-3. Duke at 11-3 under John Shire. A good start for him, replacing the legendary Mike Krzyzewski. Jamie Dixon with TCU off to a great start, 12-1. Xavier is 18 at 12-3. Sean, if you remember, God, I can't remember what I was going to say there. Sorry. Baylor, 10-3, off to another good start there. They're down 7, though. They've lost a couple games in a row. Missouri, 12-1. Missouri was a really good basketball program for a long time. It falls on some hard times here in the last half a decade, and their former head coach, Mike Anderson, has had his issues at St. John's as well. So good to see Missouri bouncing back. New Mexico, 14-0. Auburn, New Mexico, coached by Rick Pitino's son as well. So they're off to a 14-0 start. They're in the top 25 now. Auburn is 11-2. Last couple of years, they've been up in the top 5. Ohio State, 10-3. And Iowa State, number 25. Some others that have been near getting votes: LSU, San Diego State, Mississippi State, Kentucky, not in the top 25. You'll notice K-State, Illinois, Marquette, my favorite as a kid. I was such a big Al McGuire fan. Providence, Virginia Tech, Memphis, West Virginia, Michigan State out of the top 25 with Coach Izzo. St. Mary's, I mentioned before. Florida Atlantic and Creighton. Dropped out of these rankings were Kentucky, Mississippi State, West Virginia, and North Carolina. Again, it is very weird to see a top 25 at this time of the year without Kentucky, without North Carolina. We don't see this all the time, right? And college basketball has gotten to be some of the smaller schools, smaller conferences have leveled the playing surface a little bit with some of the bigger boys. So some interesting stuff to keep an eye on in college basketball as we start to heat up that season. We talked a little bit in the past, and college conference play is just getting underway. A couple teams that I think you should watch out for here this year. I already mentioned Arkansas. Not a big surprise because they've been good for a couple of years now, but Eric Musselman's done a very good job there, and he continues to do a good job through some tough circumstances. Kelvin Sampson's done a great job at Houston as well. Has got them being very consistent again in the American Conference. This was a former power in the old Southwest Conference. Excuse me, guys. Years ago, Houston, you remember Phi Slamma Jamma, and before that, the Big E, Alvin Hayes, great teams under Guy Lewis. They've made a resurgence here in the last 3-4 years under Kelvin Sampson, who has been around the block here, guys. Had a tough time at Indiana. He was at Oklahoma, then he went to Indiana, and he got into this whole, issue with telephone call. It was just a sordid, messy situation that thank you for the bless you, by the way, CA. CA talking about East Carolina. What are they doing? Let's take a look. They're playing probably in what? Let's see. I'm going to guess they're probably in the Conference USA. No. Where are they? Come on, I know you're here. You know what? There's a lot more conferences in basketball than there are in football. I feel like I missed them. Where are they playing these days? Don't they play in the Sun Belt? Where are they? I can't find them, Sia. You got to help me out. Again, East Carolina, they're playing well. It's a good example of a team that is not well known that maybe will make some noise. Who knows? I love teams in some of these leagues like, what's the league that I like so much here in the East? The Atlantic 10. There's some really good teams there. St. Bonaventure, Davidson, really good teams. Mid-Atlantic. Where do they play football? They don't play football for the Mid-Atlantic, do they? Well, that's too funny. I got a Mid-Eastern Atlantic, which that's not them. I got a Mid-American. I got a Metro Atlantic where Siena, where I am, plays. They're second place behind Iona and Rick Pitino there. Well, how come I can't find? I thought they played in Conference USA, to be honest with you. Well, I apologize for not being able to find them here, CA. Let me see if I try something here. Will this work here? East. Hang on. We're going to go. We're going to find this. We're going to find you. There they are. They're in the AAC, the American Conference. They're 1-1, 10-5 overall. You know what? I'll tell you what. We were talking about underrated conferences a second ago, CA. I mentioned the A10, but the American Conference, again, is also a very deep conference when we're talking basketball, even in football, but different teams, obviously. Houston, as I said, has become a power again. Temple's still playing some really good basketball at times. SMU has had some good seasons here and there. Cincinnati, historically, has been a strong team. Tulane now and again. Memphis, with Penny Hardaway, not off to probably off to a better start this year than they were last year. They're 11-4 overall, 1-1 in the conference. Your East Carolina Pirates, 10-5 overall. UCF and Wichita State, who's kind of fallen off the map after having some really good seasons playing out of the Missouri Valley Conference, has not done all that well since they had to fire their head coach, Greg Marshall, and has moved to the Mid-American, not a Mid-American, the American Athletic Conference. You told me the wrong. You better go to sleep, CA. They should be in the ACC. You know what? You may be right. This is a school that's good enough in sports, the two sports that matter as far as, determining your conference, football and basketball. They're probably good enough to be a mid-level ACC team at worst. So I don't know if I really, disagree with you there at all. But the American Conference is a conference to be careful of once we get to tournament time. And the A10 I talked about, the Atlantic Coast Conference, man, the last few years, things have been upside down. North Carolina, again, off to a bad start, 9-5. They didn't get off to a good start last year under Hubie Davis and finished strong and got into the Final Four. But a bad start for them again this year. Bad start for North Carolina State. Bad start for Notre Dame. Bad start for Louisville, 2-13. I think they lost their first 11 games. At the top, you got Miami, Pittsburgh, and Clemson. And Syracuse, who I've been trying to write off here. Jim Boeheim's got his team winning all of a sudden. They're 10-5, 3-1 in the conference. We'll see if they can continue that. Local product from Glens Falls up here, Joe Girard, leading that team. So a little bit upside down is the ACC right now. The Big East is better than it's not the Big East that I grew up, right? And again, I talk all the time about ESPN and some of their documentaries, their 30 for 30s. If you haven't seen Requiem, hard word for me to say. Requiem, I'll just continue to say it wrong, for the Big East. Watch it. It's about the birth of the Big East. Dave Gavitt putting these, I want to say ragtag, but odd collection of teams. The Big East came about because there was no major conference here in the East. They had the ECAC. Teams were independents. It was a great league. It's not as good as it was, believe me, but it's really made a comeback the last few years. Providence has played some really great basketball. Xavier's a good basketball team. Marquette's played well. UConn playing great under Danny Hurley. Creighton's been very consistent over the last several years. Villanova, we know what they've done. Struggling a little bit in the first year after Jay Wright, 7-7. Seton Hall, struggling a bit in the first year of Holloway from St. Peter's with their great run in the NCAA tournament last year, 8-8. St. John's got off to a great start under Mike Anderson in non-conference play. They're 1-4 in a conference, lost 4 in a row, and they're reeling. And Mike Anderson is going to start feeling the heat there very, very soon. We do agree more than we disagree. There's one big topic we don't agree on for sure, but we don't want to get into that again tonight. We'll get into that on Sunday. What else are some other conferences that kind of are underranked or not as good as they used to be even? Big West, by the way, that's an underrated school. You got some schools like UC Santa Barbara. Pepperdine's been good throughout in some years. I think they've moved on out of that conference, but some good schools out in California in that school or in that league. Conference USA used to be a powerhouse at one point when Louisville played there and Memphis played there. They're just kind of struggling through. UAB, Charlotte, Florida Atlantic are really the strong teams in that conference. The Horizon, not quite as good as they were in the past when they had Loyola. For sure, Loyola is a team that's been really good the last several years. Before their coach hopscotched off to Oklahoma. But there's still some good teams here. Milwaukee's always got a pretty solid team. Cleveland State's got a solid team. Cleveland State's been a team that's made noise in a tournament in the years that they get in. The Metro Atlantic that I talked about with Siena, the local, our local team here in the capital region in New York, and about them in Albany State. Iona is certainly the kingpins with Rick Pitino as their head coach. It'll be interesting to see if he sticks it out there long term or starts to look for a better job at some point. He says this is his last coaching job. We'll see. He's doing a very good job. He's 3-0 in the conference. Siena's always very strong. Siena has done very well in the NCAA tournament when they've gotten in over the years. Iona's made some noise in certain years. That's a really good basketball league. So again, similar to football, where we tell the SEC elitists that, you've got great football. You're the best conference in the country. There's some really good football being played elsewhere. Same thing stands for basketball. Whether it's the SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, you don't have a monopoly on good basketball. There's some really good basketball being played around the country. Trying to look at some of these other conferences. There's so many conferences. You get some good teams out of the Missouri Valley Conference, as I said. It's not quite as good as it was when it had Wichita State at their top here again a decade ago now, probably when they made their improbable run to the Final Four. But they've had good teams. Usually every year there's somebody that steps up. A Drake, an Indiana State. Larry Bird's alma mater playing good basketball this year. Bradley's had some good teams through the years. So this, again, another underrated conference. The Mountain West, just like in football being underrated, they're underrated in basketball. There's some good teams. Nevada, always a really good team. That's where Eric Musselman made his bones in college before he went to Arkansas. San Diego State, always pretty strong. Fresno State, a fairly consistent team. Not so much this year. We just talked about the New Mexico Bulldogs with Pitino. I can't think of his first name now. Rick Pitino's son. It'll come to me about the time we sign off tonight. Doing a great job at 14-1 overall, 2-1 in the conference. Watch out for a team like New Mexico. Who else? It's probably all we got. Summit League. Oral Roberts has been a surprise the last couple of years. 12-3 again this year, 3-0 in the conference. The Sun Belt, James Madison. This used to be a stronger league as well, but James Madison, Georgia Southern, Southern Miss are really the leaders in that conference as well. And I think East Carolina may have played in this conference before they moved to the American, by the way, CA. The West Coast Conference, as we talked about, has been strong with St. Mary's and Gonzaga, BYU. Gonzaga jumps ship and goes to the Big 12. This league's going to have some trouble, I'm afraid. But again, been a pretty good basketball team through the years. Loyola Marymount, who I mentioned at the top of the show, we talked about the horrible tragedy with Hamlin, DeMar Hamlin, the Buffalo cornerback, Monday night. It reminded me a lot of Hank Gathers in the 90s, dying on a basketball court during the West Coast Conference tournament. He was one of the great players in the country at that time, a great physical specimen, but he had a heart problem, and the medicine that he took made him lethargic, and he wasn't as good a player, and he cut back on his medicine so that he could get that energy boost back, and it cost him his life. So again, tragedies happen, and sometimes they're avoidable and sometimes they are not. So anyway, that's some of the stuff going around college basketball. What do you got here, CA? Red and Orange men. Ed Pickney's job on Ewing won me a good coin in early manhood. You're talking about the probably one of the biggest upsets. We were talking about this. I think we were just talking about this a couple of weeks ago. The highest seeds. Oh, that's right. I was talking with John DeLon here on this show about long shots and having a chance to win. What was the highest seed ever to win an NCAA tournament? I believe it was at Ed Pickney's Villanova squad. I think they were an 8 seed, if I'm not mistaken, CA, beating Ewing and the number 1 ranked Georgetown Hoyas at that time, playing a near perfect game to win that men's championship. That was a lot of exciting. And you know what? The Redmen, which we can't call them the Redmen anymore because of political correctness. I'm assuming you're talking about St. John's, who are now the I don't even know what the hell they are. What are they? So annoying that I got to go back and look and see what a freaking team's nickname is, because they had to change it from what it was for decades. I know I'm so politically incorrect, and I apologize for it, but I just can't help myself. Red Storm, thank you. And the Orangemen of Syracuse. That was that Big East. And see, if you haven't watched the 30 for 30 that I just talked about, please go find it, go watch it. It is tremendous about how to build a basketball league and how the Big East became the first really big television conference in the country. Back in the cabin with the wife's tablet, bigger keyboard, better typing. No worries at all, buddy. I don't know why I still got this thing up here. I've been talking about college basketball forever, and I got this stupid thing up here. Whatever. What else you guys got? Anything else? We got a few minutes left. If not, I'm going to wrap it up. It's about time to wrap it up anyway. CA, you got any last thoughts? Kenny, I don't know if you're still here. You got any last thoughts? Certainly bring them out. We're winding down, guys. We got the college football final coming on Monday night. TCU, excuse my scream, TCU and Georgia, David against Goliath. Can we shut the SEC elitists up for good, or at least for a few months? Will Jim Harbaugh still be the coach of Michigan this time next week? Black Monday's coming in the NFL. Jim Harbaugh is going to get an offer, and he's probably going to go. Question for me is Ryan Day going to be the head coach at Ohio State come next year? Lots to talk about. We'll be pivoting a bit to basketball the more we go forward here. Was a great league, man. I miss it, man. When I was a younger man myself, CA, in my 20s, in the 80s, some great battles. Every night it was a battle in the Big East. Anyway, CA, thanks for helping me out here tonight. Guys, big game Monday night. Let's go Horned Frogs. Keith Engel for TGI Sports Talks College Football, Basketball Huddle. We'll see you next Wednesday. Maybe I might have a conflict, but we'll see. I'll keep you abreast.